Hey friends, so welcome back to my channel. I'm Elysia Writes, and this is a writing, cozy baking, post-first draft existential crisis vlog. Also, this is the vlog that I cannot get right. I have recorded this audio, like, it feels like the millionth time at this point. I actually tried to do the audio live as I was working on making the pumpkin pie and turkey-shaped dinner rolls. Unfortunately, the microphone I was using, for whatever reason, only recorded, like, the audio was only coming through the left side of my headset when I was listening back to it. I don't know why. I'm going to try to troubleshoot that so I can make the audio better next time without having to do a voiceover. But, you know, it is what it is. So let's just rip the Band-Aid off. Basically, I was up until 2 a.m. writing the first draft. And then I did get a couple hours of sleep. And then as I was getting ready, and, you know, showers are supposed to be relaxing. Instead, I was having a mild existential crisis because everything was running through my brain at once. You know, how do I edit? I need a cover. I need a title. Do I need a website? How do I do this? And I had just a momentary bit of panic of, how am I going to do this and not ruin my entire future? So let's talk through this, because frankly, carbs and talking to you guys are cheaper than therapy. And if you stick with me, towards the end of the video, I will also be dropping the book blurb, the draft version of it, as a special little Thanksgiving pre-Christmas treat. So let's get into publishing, editing, what 2026 is going to look like a little bit. Also, just a complete side note, this is the first time I've actually ever used a food processor to make pie dough. The last time I made it, I used a fork, and frankly, I'm never going back. My poor wrists were so trashed after making pie crust one time without a food processor. So yeah, my brain I'm running on one and a half brain cells today. Thank you very much. So thinking about everything I've ever read, everything I've ever watched, when you're talking about editing and publishing a book, you have two tracks. You have traditional publishing and you have self-publishing. And basically everything I've ever seen, the process basically goes like, you write the draft, you edit the draft, you cry. If you're going the traditional publishing route, you query, cry, continue querying, cry. If you get picked up, then you go through another round of edits and things like that before you publish, and then you cry, and then you repeat that ad nauseum for each book. If you're going the self-publishing route, you cry a lot more because you're doing all those steps yourself. So, you know, it's very simple, very chill, very demure. Also, absolutely not terrifying at all. So right now, I am sitting over here going, okay, do I self-publish? Do I try to traditional publish? And then thinking about content, I automatically just want to speed run publishing. Like, I just want to get it all done and, like, you know, produce videos for it. And, you know, that does not end well. I have seen how that ends. I watch book talk drama channels, thank you very much. And I don't want to be a cautionary tale. So instead of sprinting towards the finish line, I am forcing myself to slow down, because frankly, it was 2 a.m. I had just finished the last sentence and I immediately wanted to jump into editing. And I told myself no, and I told myself, you need to go to bed. I also want to like panic plan the next 5 months. And I know I need to take a break and actually think about this realistically and set concrete timelines. And by concrete, I don't actually mean set in stone, even though I know that's what that means, because everything is kind of subject to change, and I'll get into that in just a little bit, but more having formalized my ideas and my potential timelines so that way I know kind of which direction I'm headed. And thinking about it more like, and this part is very, very on brand for me, overthinking things and trying to do way too much all at once. I know I need to slow down, and I need to focus on Christmas. I need to focus on probably some other content for a little bit, give myself a break, an actual legitimate break from writing. And that being said, though, I do have to get chapter 1 edited to submit to the Readsy novel contest. And that likely will be the only chapter I touch before Christmas. And it kind of needs to be the only chapter I touch before Christmas. I think if I tried to push myself to edit right now, I would wind up making worse choices and having to do more edits than giving myself the time to rest, recharge, and come back to it with fresh eyes. Now, publishing. I'm leaning towards self-publishing. A couple different reasons. The biggest one is that, maybe it's imposter syndrome, maybe it's self-doubt, maybe it's just the 1.5 brain cells making me question all of my life choices right now. I just don't feel special enough to be chosen. Like, I just don't feel like, it's one of those things where like, I feel like it would happen to everybody else, but it's not something that would happen to me. And I'm not fishing for compliments. After watching a lot of other people's publishing journeys, it's very realistic just how incredibly hard and competitive the traditional publishing space is, and how unrealistic for me to go into this process expecting to get a book deal as a debut author. That just doesn't really happen. So my current plan is to treat 2026 as self-publishing, as planning to self-publish this book, hopefully in 2026. I am not putting out firm deadlines yet because I do not know how long it's going to take me to get through like the editing phase, and I want to give myself some time to actually market. And it's a full-time job on top of my full-time job. So I have to make sure that I am not burning myself out. Also, aren't these little guys cute? It took me a little bit to try to figure out how to twist the arms and the legs, and most of them turned out looking, not quite super awkward. And then also with self-publishing means I will be taking on the entire cost of publishing this book myself. So I need to make sure to include budgeting in my planning process for 2026, which means I get to get a cool planner and pretend I'm a very organized person. Most of the planners end up somewhere collecting dust after a couple months. So hopefully I'll actually be consistent with this one because it'll be for publishing. And, I do have to start thinking about budgets for things like editing, artists, cover art, formatting. I also have to be thinking of a plan B if I can't afford to hire anybody, which means doing it myself, and making sure that doing it myself does not mean I'm compromising on the quality that will be put out, which means either waiting and delaying when the book gets published until I can afford to do those things. So also with that, I'm just going to do a shameless plug right now. If you like this video, if you like the blurb you're about to hear, please subscribe. If I ever reach the point of getting this channel monetized, the money will go towards funding the book and any future books. This is potentially part of a trilogy. You won't just be supporting content. You'll be funding spooky little fictional people. All right, so on to the fun part of this vlog. I have, up until now, I have been pretty quiet about the actual plot of the book because I really, really wanted to get the first draft done. I wanted to make sure that there was nothing that changed drastically from the outline I had created and the original blurb I had written. And frankly, it did. And that's why I'm glad I waited. Please keep in mind, it is still a work in progress. There is likely stuff that will change as I move through the editing process. And I also I will not quite be releasing the names of the main characters yet. So I will be referring to the female main character as FMC and the male main character as MMC. I will hopefully do some type of really cool character cover art reveal type of dealy bob later down the line. So here it is. FMC has spent a decade using suppressants to silence the ghosts in her head and the traumatic memories she can't quite recall. When a dream about a missing child, Brooklyn Danvers, shatters her carefully constructed peace, FMC is forced to use the psychic abilities she's long feared. Her unofficial investigation puts her on a collision course with Detective MMC, a man exiled to the Cold Case Division for digging too deep into his own brother's suspicious death. When FMC and MMC realize the missing girl and his brother's death are connected, they form an uneasy alliance. But as FMC's powers grow, so do her memories. Together they must race against time to unravel a decades-old conspiracy and save Brooklyn before it's too late. So yeah, that's where I'm at. I have a working blurb, I have a tentative plan, and I do feel less panicky going into December. And overall, I am so proud at what I accomplished, both with my baking and finishing the first draft of my novel. The next stage is scary, but I'm ready to face it head on, likely after Christmas. So, thank you for hanging out with me today, for baking with me, and listening to me process this out loud. If you want to stick around for edits, publishing chaos, and cozy writing content, and whatever other existential crisis comes next, I'd love to have you here. Happy holidays. See you in the next one. Toodaloo.